how this happens, that these people are so obviously criminal, and it just gets blown over, it just gets passed over. They never get prosecuted. And do they think we're that stupid out here?
They've had so much power and gotten by with it for so long, and they're so narcissistic. Their hubris is just beyond bounds. They can't even fathom. I mean, Comey, I don't know what to say about Comey. I mean, really, the man is so full of himself and unfounded self-righteousness and hubris. He thinks he's untouchable and has done nothing wrong when he almost destroyed the entire FBI single-handedly. Its reputation, it will take years to recover. It's got to be rebuilt from the ground up because it's really 20 years at least of that attitude. Mueller had it and Comey had it, and that covers 16 years or more. So it's got to be rebuilt from the ground up and people trained to restore fidelity, bravery, and integrity. The key word there being integrity. Because if our law enforcement agents and agencies are not completely honest, we are lost.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, as President Trump declares a national emergency to deal with the coronavirus, we ask the question, is the mainstream media doing everything they can to overhype the virus to try to cause both panic buying in the stores and panic selling on Wall Street? We're going to take a deep, close look at that. Plus, there's a bunch of other breaking news stories that are getting zero coverage right now because of the coronavirus. So we're going to take a look at those, and you guys are going to stick around and check that out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm your host, Craig. Today, we're going to start really quickly saying thank you to everybody who hit that subscribe button. If you haven't, please come here to the landing page, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications, then click the all button so you get notified as soon as all of these videos get posted. Today, we're picking up where we left off. We left off at QPost 3894, and we haven't had any new ones, so we are in the midst of a major global pandemic, it seems, but a lot of people out there seem to think it's a lot more than just a pandemic. There's something going on across the world, and it does, to me at least, look like there is some organization to what is happening. And from what I'm hearing on the back end, there's been a lot of confusion, a lot of misdirection, and that seems to be on purpose. It seems that there is active operations taking place. President Trump just now declaring a national emergency opens up access to $50 billion for states to combat the virus. But also, remember, we've talked about this here on the boards before, how in order for President Trump to effectively use the military inside of our own borders to go after, let's just hypothetically say, the deep state, the individuals involved in this global criminal syndicate that we've been talking about for quite some time, the people who were paying millions and millions of dollars into our corrupt government officials' slush funds in order to effectively get their crimes to be either ignored or in some cases actually abetted to. So this is what we're looking at now. That the national emergency that President Trump just declared gives him an incredible amount of authority inside of our own borders to take actions unilaterally against enemies of the state who would threaten our country's security in this time of national emergency. Now, what does that mean for you and me and the normal people of America? Well, if it's true, probably not that much. It mostly means that if you're one of these cabal members, you better be on your private jet and already in your bunker in New Zealand, because things are about to get pretty bad for you guys. And that's just the start of it. As we look at some of the news coming out here, talk about major resignations. Today, March 13, 2020, Microsoft officially announces its head and co-founder, Bill Gates, is stepping down. That's right, resigning from the company's board of directors, quote unquote, to take time to, or quote, to dedicate more time to his philanthropic priorities, including global health, development, education, and his increasing engagement in tackling climate change, unquote. So this is something that is very important because we have to remember Washington is one of the major epicenters for this virus. And we all know that Bill Gates' family is connected back to things that if you want to go down that rabbit hole, that's a whole nother video. But if you can just look at the history of his family, its connection to certain eugenics programs, and not only that, Planned Parenthood as well, I believe. And if you look at the connections to his own philanthropy and what he's been doing with the Bill Gates, global initiative to end diseases like malaria and all these other things, there is something there. And Bill Gates has even been one of the people who's come out publicly saying and advocating for things like we need to reduce the population of the world in order to save it from climate change. And how do you reduce the population of the world? I mean, I'm going to leave that for your imagination, but you can think of some pretty probably disturbing ways that have been making themselves quite known as we go on. So President Trump declares a national emergency. There was this major conference. He had all the heads of industry. They came together. They talked about, the supply chain problems, what's going to be happening with the CDC, and then the development of a treatment for this disease, and a whole bunch of other stuff in that press conference, which is very important information. I'll leave a link to it. You guys should definitely go watch it. It's a little over an hour, but it's worth watching. Now, as the stock market made a relatively good gain today, I think around 800 points before the close, on this positive press conference from President Trump, where we acknowledge the fact there's a national emergency. We opened up emergency funds to help keep the states afloat during this time. Closing down our borders with both these major Asian nations and our trade and borders, cargo and people from Europe, we're posturing ourselves to show that we are not beholden to these globalists anymore. As President Trump has also told us, the White House is working on the Buy American executive order, which is supposed to end reliance on Chinese medical supplies. So what are we doing, guys? We're breaking our interdependence on these other major nations who are our adversaries, our enemies even. In certain ways, you could think of it as being a very, very strategic national security threat for us to have our entire medical supply chain basically run through China before it gets here to America. Think of the devastation that they could inflict on us by doing nothing other than withholding the supplies which they manufacture for us. And look at how vulnerable we are to that as we come into this global pandemic crisis, right? Coronavirus is real. It is a threat to people who get it. But I think there's so much more to this. And we have to look at it from all the different angles and try to understand how there is strategy involved. This is the last year of President Trump's administration. I've been hearing from my sources who I trust that this has been coming for quite some time. It's been in the works for quite some time. Everybody said, nothing big's ever going to happen. When I said something big is coming, I hear, back in December, I think I was starting to hear chatter from people saying, look, it's about to get real. And over the next 3 months, it has done nothing but escalate. And it's gotten to the point where I realize now that President Trump is doing something nobody's ever done, I think. And I think that's really what his biggest, accomplishment really in totality will be, is what's happening right now for this term, at least. And it's like what 3 Days, 3 Nights, great account over on Twitter, said the other day, saying, listen very carefully, think hostile takeover. We're shorting the Fed. Stocks must first plummet. Rig for red to own the Fed. Result is financial freedom. Stocks soar to all-time highs. #QAnon. What are we doing here, guys? We're rig for red to end the Fed. Red was what we had to go down in order to basically flush out all of these institutional investors who have used their major institutional investments in our market to be able to fluctuate it in order to continue to enrich themselves and also threaten our national security, our national economic security by having the ability to, drop markets 5-10% in one day, right? Just by a few major institutions leveraging their positions in a certain way. So this is what we're trying to break the system of. Now you're going to say, some people say, oh, that's capitalism, whatever. Look, I understand the difference between capitalism and a international criminal cartel of thugs who think that they can control us from outside of our borders using their immense wealth in order to affect certain outcomes within our economy or within our country, as you see with this pandemic. Everybody in the media first said it's the Wuhan virus. Then they said it's racist to say it's the Wuhan virus. Well, which is it? Because as far as I'm concerned, the virus came from China. And China is the one country on the world, basically, probably, I think, the only country in the world at this point who could afford to lose millions of people to an epidemic and at the same time come out of it, stronger and in a better position because of the way that our supply chain is set up, the way that our manufacturing is set up. You got to see it for what it is. So if anything, as long as we can contain this epidemic, this pandemic, as long as we can contain it and make sure that we don't allow it to spread and become a terrible loss of life, which it could very well become, you have to be very cognizant of this, then we can ultimately use this as the precedent on which we move forward, saying we are not going to have our supply chain going through China, as it's highlighted here in President Trump's executive order that he's working on. And then this provides cover for all types of military operations that can happen here inside of our borders, that have to happen to end some of these, evil folks doing evil things, in my humble opinion. So just think about that. Now, also, this is the news that they don't want you to see, right? As we talk about all of the news surrounding coronavirus, and they've shut down the NBA, they've shut down the college March Madness, they've shut down everything, right? And speaking of March Madness, look at what Q told us back in March 10th. Okay, so almost 2 years ago exactly, Q told us to an anon who said, hey, Q, are we going to have a big week this week? Q says March Madness. Again, saying in March 15, 2018, March Madness, public will know soon. Again, in 2019, on March 3rd, Q tells us, full-scale attack, March Madness, prepare. So we've had Q telling us to prepare for March Madness for 2 years now, right? So the Anons knew this was coming. I know I'm very prepared. I know our family's prepared. I'm sure all of you are out there very prepared for whatever's to come. And that's why we're going to be the ones who help the rest of those around us get through this, right? That's why Q has always told us from the beginning, we have to be aware of all this stuff so we can help others. And that's really, in my opinion, the only way that we can really help is to inform others, to tell them it's going to be all right, tell them that we're going to have to go through this short period of a tough time in order to come out the other end better and stronger and less dependent on these foreign countries who are our adversaries, less dependent on them and less basically insecure. And to have that sense of national security is what we're trying to regain, because as President Trump has said from day one, it's about America first, right? And don't forget, this is the article we got back in March from Q talking about Hillary Clinton saying the country is in full-fledged crisis during speech in Selma that marks Bloody Sunday. Well, guess what? Now, the Clintons are in a full-fledged crisis. In my humble opinion, that may be the case. I'm not sure. It's a speculative statement, so do with it as you will. Take it with a grain of salt. But it seems that they're the ones who have a lot to worry about, right? Because everything that has happened to this point is about exposing not just the internal corruption. That's pretty much what I've come to find is going to be the sum total of President Trump's first presidency, his first term, is going to be internally cleaning this country up, getting rid of the corruption in the FBI, in the DOJ, in the certain parts of the White House, the NSC, etc., getting rid of this entrenched deep state bureaucracy who is unaccountable, who seems to have no problem with, facilitating the wholesale destruction of our country from within. That's what we're standing up against, right? These individuals, as we see this story coming out of the Gateway Pundit talking about Hillary Clinton filing an appeal to stop her court-ordered email testimony. So Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch have been doing an incredible job forcing Hillary Clinton to come in and be deposed about what she did with her emails, right? The 33,000 emails, like we talked about in the last episode, the golden trove, the ones that were the backups from the BlackBerry that were found on Anthony Weiner's laptop that apparently, according to General Flynn's lawyer, Sidney Powell, made detectives in the NYPD, veteran seasoned detectives, throw up after seeing what was on the contents of those emails. Those ones that disappeared, that when Comey had the chance to go and get search warrants to go and look at, decided not to, according to Sidney Powell, General Flynn's lawyer. So ask yourself this: is this why we're seeing this global crisis, and is President Trump taking the gloves off? And was this all planned for? As in, did we know it was coming and do everything we could to stop it, but also have the contingency to deal with it if it happens? I don't know. I'm asking that question to you guys, and you guys can leave your thoughts down below with what you think this may all be. But what do you think that they're so afraid of? Well, here you have Catherine Herridge over on Twitter reporting this document here, saying the Ukraine Senate investigation is ongoing, right? The one that Lindsey Graham has been promising that they were going to investigate, which conveniently, right when we start going at some of the main actors in that, Biden, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, the Obama administration previously, and some of the major players in Ukraine, you have a global pandemic that just conveniently breaks out at the perfect time once they've used all their ammunition on President Trump. First it was the Russia hoax, then it was the Ukraine quid pro quo. Then when they finally had nothing, right, now all of a sudden you're seeing the pandemic. Now it's President Trump's fault that there's a virus that comes out of China, which may or may not have been a bioweapon that was unleashed on purpose. Just throwing it out there. And that cannot be confirmed or denied at this moment. Or I don't know. It can't be proven either way, as I should say. But that is something to consider. But now as they go into Burisma and Blue Star Strategies, you don't hear anything about this in the news besides Catherine Herridge making this little blip here, and then they might talk about it for 5 seconds. But what is sucking all the air out of the room? The coronavirus. But nothing to worry about, just convenient timing there, I'm sure. Coincidental. Not a part of the storm at all, I'm sure. Anyway, Federal Reserve here is set to inject $1.5 trillion into markets to offset economic impact of coronavirus. Now, what we have to understand about the Fed, I think, is there's a system that is in place right now that we are trying to fix. It's a broken system where an unelected, unaccountable private organization called the Federal Reserve has been charging us interest to produce a currency for who knows how long. I mean, I guess since the early 1900s, I guess you could say. And but even it goes on before that, because there's always been some form of international banking inside of our country. And that is really what they've done. They just, these banksters, right? This cabal of global banking globalists, they are the ones who have taken their money, the Red Shield Rothschilds and the Bank of England. Look at what they did when they reported that France had won in order to fleece the entire English bank and buy the entire country basically for pennies on the dollar, right? These people were involved in some of the most insidious and nefarious trading and wealth transfers ever in the history of modern era, I guess you could say, semi-modern era. And with that, we're breaking a system that goes back centuries, right? And not just centuries to the Rothschilds and everything, but also to what you're seeing with Italy and the Vatican City and what's happening there, right? They've shut down the entire country. And remember, what we've talked about before on here is about the three city-states. You know, you have Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican City. These three independent countries that are sovereign territories who have controlled the wealth of this entire world for so long. And President Trump's finally putting a stop to a lot of it, I believe, behind the scenes. So, at the same time as all of this is happening, we have President Trump launching strikes against Iran-backed militias who actually pulled off a deadly rocket attack against U.S. forces just recently. And you have to think to yourself also, the war that's been going on has been going on for quite some time. And what we're engaged in the Middle East is basically, I would say, a tactical withdrawal, but I wouldn't even classify it as that. I would say we are taking the oil and we're withdrawing from the conflict areas in order to basically keep our soldiers and airmen and Marines and everyone out of harm's way, right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. So you can see it right here in real time what President Trump is doing on a global scale and how a lot of this isn't even making it into the news now, obviously because of Corona. As President Trump is up against this, White House officials are alleging now that Speaker Pelosi, inside of this coronavirus stimulus plan, wanted to include the Hyde Amendment loophole so that millions of dollars would go to Planned Parenthood, which, in my humble opinion, is the biggest farce and violation of the usage of taxpayer dollars, because no taxpayer dollars should ever be used to fund an organization that is involved in the kind of atrocities and crimes against, in my opinion, my humble opinion, despicable crimes such as, taking the life of an unborn child. But the laws are the way they are, so there's not much you can really do for that. But also remember, until we change the laws, I should say. But also don't forget, it was on March 1st of 2018 when President Trump made a very slight and critical amendment to the manual for court-martials in the United States. And I believe, if you read through this order and understand it to a degree, that the amendment made it possible now for not just military officials to be held in court-martial, but you could also hold government officials in some form of court-martial. And just throwing that out there to let people know that when you're in a national emergency now, the gloves are off, right? President Trump can shut down any place he wants to shut down. He has full control over travel internationally, basically, out of the United States. So these people, unless they're already sitting down in their bunkers in New Zealand or wherever, I'm going to tell you right now that it's a high probability that they are going to want to just continue to run like the vermin that they may be. But I'm not even going to say anything. That's up for you guys to kind of look at and decide for yourself, not to mention this report, which I just thought was kind of funny, that said Biden was reportedly thought to be a safe VP pick in 2008 because he was too old to have presidential aspirations. And it's sad to see what's happening to him now. The guy's obviously mentally just not there. I feel like half the time, just not really involved. And you guys tell me what you think in the comments, because we've seen what's happening on the campaign trail. And I think this is the moment they realized that President Trump was going to get reelected, when they realized that Joe Biden was going to be the candidate for the Democrats in 2008 or 2020. So that's what I think was the straw that broke the camel's back as far as this whole global catastrophe coming together, happening. All of that seems to be connected, but obviously it's a question. I'm just posing it to you. You tell me what you think down in the description below, obviously, and let me know what you think down there. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this episode. A few more things before we go. Obviously, I always remind everybody, come over here and find me on Twitter. You can follow me at JustInformYou. I'm also at JustInformedNews.com, and of course, BitChute.com/JustInformedTalk. Also, you should be brave. Download the Brave browser. It's a great product and it's free. And you use the link in the description to download it. That lets them know that I sent you. Then they'll make a contribution to this channel. So you download it, install it, and run it on your computer. And what is it? It's a better internet browser. I can guarantee you guys are going to love it. It blocks the ads, which makes your internet experience that much more enjoyable. And this video was brought to you on a Brave browser. So I hope you guys go check that out. Now, a few other ways you can help out are both financial. You can help out through Patreon, Patreon.com. It's a crowdfunding website. And your donations keep this channel alive. So everyone who donates on a monthly basis, you guys keep it running. YouTube's done everything they can to cut out the ability for this channel to earn revenue through their platform. I've had to find outside advertisers, here and there, but primarily it's all funded through your contributions here. It's a monthly donation. You set it and forget it. You're helping create content. I also have a GoFundMe set up. If you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation, links to everything that we've talked about here today will be in the description to this video. Now, this is a segment we do at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And today I want to share with you a verse, and this is out of the book of 1 John, chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, and it's an important verse, and I want to share it with you right now. It says, "Do not love the world or the things that belong to the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in him. For everything that belongs to the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride in one's lifestyle, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world with its lust is passing away. But the one who does God's will remains forever." So that's my message to you guys out there. Just remember, what we see in the world, the things that we think are so important. A lot of you out there, probably maybe a little nervous, maybe a little frightened. I know that can happen, and especially when you are faced with these unknowns, and then on top of that, all the things that you come used to relying upon, like the sports, or going out to the restaurant, or watching your favorite basketball game or football game on TV, or going to the movies, that these things have seemingly started to disappear, right? And that's a very troublesome time. You think, well, what's going to happen? Well, remember, like it says here, the one who does God's will remains forever. Because everything that belongs to the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride in your lifestyle, it's not from the Father, it's from the world. And we know the world is imperfect. We know the world is a sinful place. We know that is why we set our eyes on high, on Christ, on the God above, on the Holy Spirit, and focusing on how the Holy Spirit lives in us, and how Christ made the sacrifice on the cross for our sins so that we could have eternal salvation, which is the life everlasting. Far more important than what we have here. So just take that in your heart and know that no matter what happens, no matter what this all turns into and how it all plays out, that as long as you live a righteous life and you do God's will, you will be saved. And you can save others by delivering that message to them. And that's my task for you. When you're worried, when you're afraid, when you're feeling like God may not be there, and it just, everything feels really unsure, reaffirm your faith in God. Strengthen it. Make it even that much more pronounced. Wear Christ out loud. Live your life that you can show others not only how much you love God, but you can show them what God can do for them by showing them the joy that exists in you. And that especially goes for times like this, where the world is lacking in joyful things, right? But there is true joy that comes from above, and we can get that right now. It's free. Costs you nothing. Say a prayer. Open your heart. Accept Jesus into your life. Accept that Christ died on the cross for your sins, and then take that, and don't just keep that for yourself. Give it to others. Share the gift of God's eternal salvation, or Christ's eternal salvation, with others. And you will just see how much of a difference you can make in this world. So that's my message to you. I want to say thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember, hit it, punch it, tap it, elbow it, bop it, twist it, whatever. Hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. That's going to be it from me. Thanks for watching this episode of Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.